This is the third and final discussion, video discussion for developmental psychology. And we had three options in our prompt this time, as usual. And this particular instance, I chose to go with the second prompt, which asked us to provide real life examples of neighborhood effects on children and or families, and then propose ways in which the local churches could alleviate these adverse effects. So we've not lived where we're at very long. We're actually in North Carolina, but we moved from a suburb of Atlanta probably about 3 years ago. And even in just that short time that we were there, we had several instances where children exhibited behaviors that they shouldn't. Or not even just children, but for instance, we had an issue with some of the neighborhood children and porch pirating, because Amazon would come conveniently and drop your beautiful little packages off on the porch, and then before you had a chance to get home from work to pick them up, little groups of children had already snagged them for you, for whatever reason. And a lot of that has to do with not being supervised, and parents have to work, and thus they were just externalizing behaviors in that aspect. But it was mildly inconvenient, to say the least, and hard to figure out how you go about correcting them, because they're not your kids, but at the same time they're kind of like doing you a disadvantage by doing so. So that was an issue. Another real life incident we had where we were at, we had a cul-de-sac that was right by our house, and there was an instance of it was a DV incident where one of the spouse of another shot and killed that person. This is the same cul-de-sac that my son would stand in to catch the bus in the morning. So, and within that cul-de-sac, there was other homes, and it was on both sides had small children. So I know that for a fact that they heard arguing and that they heard a shooting, and then in the next morning there's cop cars and this big brown van sitting like basically in their driveway. Another instance was across the street from where we lived. It was a very compact subdivision. There was a criminal barricaded inside the home, and so for my children, they kept asking, like, what is that sound? Because they had a megaphone out and they were trying to have the guy come out of the home. He wouldn't come out, and so I had to send them to their rooms with headphones, just so that way they wouldn't have to hear whatever was being said, and I didn't want them worried. Plus, we couldn't leave. We got trapped in our driveway from all of the emergency vehicles and the fire trucks and all of that. And we were trying to take my son to wrestling practice, but obviously he had to miss it that evening. So anyway, those are some real life examples that I've actually personally dealt with, which cause a little bit less than ideal childhood experiences. We don't want that for any child. We don't want them to ever have any kind of fear put forth in that, but it happens. So the second part of that would be propose ways in which local churches can do to alleviate those effects. So for the first instance of the children running around grabbing packages off people's porches and taking them or selling them, or don't even know what happened to them after that. Churches can do a lot of things. Sometimes they're financially kind of in a pickle, so they can only extend things so far. But you can do after school programs and activities to pull those kids off the streets, to keep them from being immersed in those experiences. You can have outreach teams go out. Our church would have outreach teams, and we'd go around the neighborhoods when they fill out those welcome cards. If they ever show up that first time, they would have little team go out and kind of just like encourage people to come back to church, to keep them coming and not just a one and done type scenario. Also, one of my favorite things about the church we attend now is they do community outings with the children, not just for helping, such as like mulching and doing yard work and stuff for people, but they'll go and do activities outside. So for instance, the youth group will take a trip to the bowling alley, and while that might just seem it's a bowling alley trip, it's also incorporating, there'll be other children there. They'll see those children. They are representing our church, and if they don't have a home church, maybe they want to learn more about Jesus and more about God through what our children are emulating while they're there at the bowling alley. So those are things churches can do or attempt to do to try to outreach, to get those youth, to get them in, to let them hear the word, and hopefully have a change of heart, and then they won't be so disposed to negative behaviors or all of those terrible other influences that they could get into, because it definitely gets worse from stealing. Thank you.